Hello, classic rock fans. I'm reporting just a couple of days after seeing Foghat and Rick Springfield at Summerfest 2025 in Milwaukee. Now, these bands weren't on the same bill. Foghat was over at the BMO Harris Pavilion stage, and Rick Springfield played on the Uline Warehouse Stage. I was able to see both because Foghat played, I think, at about 7:30, and then Rick's set started at 9:30. And I chose these two bands because Foghat was opening for George Thorogood, who I saw with John Fogerty last year, so I didn't really feel the need to see him again right away. And the band that played before Rick Springfield was Grand Funk Railroad. I've seen them as well. I saw them back in 2019 when they opened for Bob Seger on his farewell tour. And if I'm honest, when I saw Grand Funk, they didn't exactly knock me out, so I was more interested in seeing Foghat at the 7:30 slot instead. Now, earlier in the day, I saw Wang Chung also at the Uline Warehouse Stage, and you can check out my review of that show right here. I had to leave Summerfest for a little bit to go to a different event, but I came back at 7 p.m. and made my way over to the BMO Harris Pavilion stage to see Foghat. Now, as my day turned out, I was actually pretty hungry when I arrived at Summerfest, so instead of going straight to Foghat's show, I went to a nearby food vendor and got something to eat. And unfortunately, I was still eating when they came on stage, so I got into their set a little late. I missed, I think, the first 3, maybe 4 songs. But I was able to see the second 2/3 of the show, and I must say it was pretty good. It was about what I expected. I'm not the biggest fan of, blues rock bands, and the only song I've known for most of my life by Foghat was Slow Ride, which I, of course, do like quite a bit, not because it was played on the radio all that much. I know Slow Ride because Slow Ride is the first song on the first edition of Guitar Hero. And I was in high school going into college when Guitar Hero was released, and that was one of the biggest video games in the world at the time, and I can't tell you how many house parties I went to back in the day where there was Guitar Hero set up in one of the rooms, and inevitably all of us would try to play various songs. Being someone who sucks at all video games, I always would just try to make it through Slow Ride on beginner mode or easy mode or whatever, and I could barely scrape by with that. So that's kind of my main memory of Slow Ride, but not to say that I don't like it. I do like the song, but it's never been one of my favorite songs, and I've never really explored Foghat's discography, which I really should get around to, because I was pleasantly surprised by some of the other songs that I saw them perform. The first of which was a newer song. The first song that I saw all the way through was called Drivin' On, and it was from their newest album, which they put out, I think, 2 years ago. It's called Drivin' On, and I was digging it. It actually reminded me a lot of another blues rock guy, Dave Mason. When I saw Dave Mason open for the Marshall Tucker Band a number of years ago, he was playing a newer song called Road Dogs. And I think maybe my expectations were unfairly low because he said it was a new song. But I was caught off guard by how much I liked that song, and in the same way, I was not expecting to really like any new music from Foghat. But I gotta say, this new song, Drivin' On, was pretty good, and it's got me rethinking how dismissive I was about hearing about their latest album. Because I remember when they dropped that album, it was called Sonic Mojo a year or 2 ago. It did make the rounds. I did see it get a lot of coverage, and I didn't make any effort to listen to it. I think that's to my regret, so I will fix that soon, perhaps in a month. Stay tuned for more on that. After that one, they played It Hurts Me Too, which is an old blues cover. I know I've heard that song in concert before, but I can't remember who I saw play it. There are so many old blues songs that I have seen performed by classic rock guys, and so few of them ever actually register with me. So I don't mean to be shitty about it, it's just not for me. And that's probably why I had skipped seeing Foghat so many times up until now, because believe me, I've had a lot of opportunities to see Foghat. They've played Summerfest every other year, or every 3 years, something to that effect, for as long as I've been going to Summerfest. And there was a stretch of time where you could reliably catch them at 4 in the afternoon. I'm happy to see now that they've been upgraded to like the 7:30 slot, which is the last slot before the headlining show. That feels appropriate for them, and honestly, that's where I wish Summerfest would put Wang Chung if they book Wang Chung again, but that's a separate issue. Although I guess I should mention, just last year, I went to see Voices of Rock Radio in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and one of the guys on that bill was Charlie Hune. And Charlie Hune was Foghat's lead singer for like the last 20 years. He left them, I think, in 2022, and they said it was because he was retiring, and I think he said the same. But he did go back out on the road with that Voices of Rock radio show, so I don't know if he's active or not. I don't know enough about him to speak on it. But I will say, what I remember from that show, Voices of Rock Radio, he did Fool for the City, which is the only other Foghat song I knew up until this point. So I thought he was pretty good. I will say he didn't exactly steal the show, but I'm still happy he was on the bill. Anyway, getting back to this show. After the It Hurts Me Too cover, they played some originals, Stone Blue, Home in My Hand, and the aforementioned Fool for the City. They mentioned their live album from, I think, 1975. That's one I'm curious to give a listen to, and yeah, I had no objections to these songs. These are like good old-fashioned 70s boogie rock. I was getting into it. And then after that, they had another old blues cover, and Charlie Hune did this one at Waterfest too. They covered the Willie Dixon song, I Just Want to Make Love to You. Surprisingly, that got some people on their feet. There was some actual dancing going on at this blues rock show. So I'll give them credit for that. They did get some people in the crowd dancing along to that song, which I appreciated. It was more lively than I expected, again, a blues rock show to be. I think my problem with that whole subgenre is I've been to so many of those shows that are absolute snoozers, where nobody in the crowd is like reacting to the music. They're just staring, you know? And I don't want to get off on a tangent about that, so I'll just say that that was not the case with Foghat. And they kept that good vibe going with their next song, which was another cover, and they played Play That Funky Music, which was originally by the band Wild Cherry. The crowd reacted pretty well to it. They had been up dancing for the song previously, so they stayed on their feet for this one. And even more people got up to dance because they recognize it. I can just tell you from my perspective, after decades of going to Summerfest and seeing many cover bands in opening spots for bands I was actually there to see, I have been subjected to covers of Play That Funky Music going back all the way to when I was a kid, and I do like that song, but if I never hear it in concert again, that would be fine. Okay, because I've just heard it so many times, and I wish I could say Foghat did something like original or unique or different with it, but they didn't. They just played it, which is fine. And again, people dance to it. No reason to, like, you know, mess with the classic, but it's just a song that I've heard so many times from bands on that same exact stage that it just didn't do a whole lot for me. But that's me personally. The crowd as a whole reacted, I think, pretty well. And like I said, the ones who had gotten on their feet for the last song stayed on their feet, and a couple other people got up to dance as well. And from there, we get the big finale, Slow Ride. And I should say that this tour that Foghat is on right now is in celebration of the 50th anniversary of Slow Ride. And because Slow Ride is off this album, they said on stage that it's also the 50th anniversary of Fool for the City, my second favorite Foghat song. I suppose my third favorite would be that new one, Driving On. I like pretty much all of the songs I heard, including the stuff I was not familiar with. The only stuff I heard that didn't really do it for me were some of the covers. And I should also say that their new lead singer, Scott Holt, sounded really good. So all in all, I had a good time. If you're someone who enjoys blues rock or that classic 70s boogie rock, I think Foghat would be a band you'd be interested in seeing. I will definitely be listening to some more of their music in the coming weeks. I don't know that I'm going to go out and see them again anytime soon, but I am glad I got to see them on this tour. Okay, set change. Now let's talk about the headliner I saw on Friday at Summerfest, Rick Springfield. Real quick, before we start, is this not the greatest album cover of all time? Before the pandemic, I used to work in an office building. And not saying anything bad about those jobs, but working in a cubicle every day of the week, there are days where that makes you feel a certain kind of way. And because of that, I always kept this album cover up on the wall of whatever cubicle I was in. So whenever the week was just bearing down on me, I would look over at that album cover, get a chuckle, and not worry so much. I guess all this to say is that this album cover makes excellent office decor, so if you work in an office, you should put this up in your cube. If just looking at this thing doesn't cheer you up, I don't know what to say. Alright, but enough about that. Let's get back to the task at hand. Rick Springfield live at Summerfest. Fantastic show. Not the first time I've seen him at Summerfest. The first time I saw him was actually back in 2018, which was another excellent show. The only problem I had with that show was the crowd. I think it was because there had been some rain earlier in the day, and that kind of messes with everybody's mood at Summerfest when that happens. I just remember the crowd was really obnoxious and particularly drunk. There was one moment where, while Rick was playing on stage, he had one of his old music videos playing on the video board behind him. One lady who was particularly drunk, she was standing right behind me, and she just shouts out, "Look how hot he used to be!" Used to be? Jeez, lady. How hot did you used to be? You know, one of those kind of moments. Anyway, all that to say is that despite the crowd, I had a great time that night because Rick put on a fantastic show, and I'm happy to say he did again this year at Summerfest. Now, at both shows, before he even came on stage, on the video board, they played a video montage hype package of Rick's various roles in movies and TV shows and other media that like even references him, like sitcom characters singing along to Jesse's Girl, that sort of thing. And I thought that was an effective way to get people ready for the show because it served as a reminder of what a bizarre career he's had. He's not just a pop star, he's become an actor, and not a joke actor. He's been received pretty well in some productions. So I enjoyed that, and I thought that was a good way to kick off the show. After the video package, he came on stage, and he opened the show with I'll Make You Happy, which was not a song I was familiar with, but it's a hard-rocking song, effective way to open the show. And from there, he played a couple of throwback classics, Affair of the Heart, and one of my favorite songs of his, I've Done Everything for You, which was a cover of a song originally written and recorded by Sammy Hagar. Now, I saw Sammy Hagar back in, I think, 2012, and he played that song as well, and he told this great story before the song where he expressed a level of frustration that when he released the song, it was a dud. It was not a hit at all. But when Rick put it out just a couple of years later, it was like a top 5 hit for him.
In 77 or something, I wrote this song, and I thought everybody at the record company, they were going, "Oh man, this is going to be a big hit and all this shit," you know. So we put it out, and it was not a hit. It was more like a flop, right? And about 5 years later, this dude comes along and records my song, and has like a top 5. So I ran into my man, Mr. Rick Springfield, one time, and I said, "What do you think?" I mean, I was kind of serious, you know. I said, "Why do you think you had such a big hit with it and I didn't?" He goes, "Dude, I'm better looking than you."
That was such a hilarious story, and part of me was wondering if we were going to hear his version of that story before the song. I think that story could actually even be a little funnier if it was Rick telling it, as long as it was a tongue-in-cheek delivery of "I'm better looking than you." But in any case, it's a funny story. But I do think there is a little bit of truth in there. It was a big hit on MTV, and I will also say I think that song is actually better served with Rick's pop rock production as opposed to Sammy's hard rock, but I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. From there, Rick played some songs that I was not familiar with, but I did enjoy them. He did Christina, I Get Excited, and I think a newer one called Venus in Overdrive. And after that one, he took a minute to talk to the crowd. about an issue that was very important to him, which is his personal struggles with depression. Now, that might surprise you that he would talk about that sort of thing on stage, but I gotta say, it was very honest and humanizing for him to just talk about his struggles with that. And it reminded me of a video that I shared on my social media after Tawny Katane passed away. In her later years, Tawny had a YouTube channel where she talked about all kinds of different things. And one of her videos, she talked about how she also struggled with depression. And she talked about people's perception, about how could someone who's like rich and famous and hot, how could they have depression? What would they be depressed about? And she said, that's not relevant because depression isn't like a mood. And she talked about how she struggled with that. And I appreciate that video because, yeah, a lot of people have misunderstandings about what depression really is. So it was very cool to hear her talk about it. Unfortunately, she has since passed away. And as I've now learned, it's been a struggle for Rick as well. And he's another person who, just like Tawny, is rich and famous and, certainly was a big sex symbol in the 80s. And he's kind of like the last guy you would expect to struggle with that sort of thing. But he did, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience who maybe also struggle with depression or other mental health issues and felt seen and validated by hearing Rick talk about it for a little bit. So I appreciate his honesty. I appreciate how candid he was about that. And I don't think it brought the show down at all because I think he talked about it well. And it served as an introduction to a song he played called Worlds Start Turning, which I believe he wrote about his mental health struggles. And it's a good song. So I have to say that's one of the more impressive parts of the show. And for anyone in the audience who also struggles with that sort of thing, I hope it was meaningful for them as well. After Worlds Start Turning, he did a medley of like 6 or 7 songs, and I guess he does this at every show where he does like these really short versions of a bunch of his songs, all one right after the other. I won't spoil all of the ones he did, but I will say that it was nice to see him play a few seconds of 2 Tickets to Paradise from Eddie Money. He put a great picture of him and Eddie up on the video board behind him, and I thought that was really sweet because Eddie's been gone for a couple of years now, and I'm glad that someone is paying tribute to him on stage because I really haven't seen that. I've seen a lot of other artists celebrated on stage, but not so much Eddie Money, and that guy was awesome. So I'm really glad to see Rick celebrate him here. From there, he played another song called Love Is Alright Tonight, and after that, he did a song called The Voodoo House, which he introduced as a sing-along. And I gotta say, this is the part of the show where he lost a little bit of the crowd. I think this song, The Voodoo House, was the only one in the set that didn't really get over with the crowd. Unfortunately, most people weren't singing along, and I did notice that this was the point of the night where people were starting to sit down. And I guess I varied the lead in that. When he first came out on stage, everybody stood up immediately and stayed standing all the way till, 10 songs into the set list. So he had the crowd on their feet. Unfortunately, this one song, The Voodoo House, I think it was okay, but this was one that people weren't totally getting into. Now, at this point, I guess I'll suggest what I think might have worked better, and maybe bring up my only complaint about the show. 2 years ago, Rick put out an album called Automatic. I reviewed it on my Album August series, and there was a bunch of songs on there that I thought were really good, and going into this show, I was kind of expecting him to play something from it. And I hate to say it, but he didn't. He skipped the whole album, even though it's just 2 years old. Now, I know Rick's not taking setlist advice from me, but I think the show would have been slightly improved had he cut The Voodoo House and put something from this new album, Automatic, into the set list. Particularly, there's 2 that I really like off it. One is called Fake It Till You Make It, or another one is called Works For Me. Both are fantastic titles. But the songs are really good as well. I just was surprised that he wasn't playing anything off of it. But after that, he got the crowd back on their feet by covering You Really Got Me, originally by the Kinks, but most famously done by Van Halen. So I thought maybe he was playing that as a tribute to like Eddie Van Halen, because him and Eddie were on MTV at the same time, and I thought he might say something about Eddie, but no, he just kind of played it straight and then went to the next song, which was the hits portion of the night. The show ended with Don't Talk to Strangers, Love Somebody, and Human Touch with an encore break, and then, of course, Jesse's Girl. Some of the strongest songs in this catalog. He had a fun sing-along portion with Don't Talk to Strangers. He talked about the movie he was in that had that soundtrack hit with Love Somebody. He talked about how embarrassing it was because he knows it was a terrible movie, and then brought up some of his better roles, and he was just kind of like, you know, I was also in American Horror Story. Did you see that? I thought that was pretty funny. And then he closed up with Human Touch, which was a nice song to close the set on. He went off stage, and, you know, everybody's clapping for an encore. And before he came back out for Jesse's Girl, he played another video on the board, which was a montage of all the pop culture references of Jesse's Girl, which was a good way of showing the impact that that song has had on pop culture, because it's been used in a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows. And of course, it got the women in the audience very excited for him to come out on stage, because obviously that's the favorite. But the screaming in the audience went to an absolute fever pitch when he came back out on stage to play Jesse's Girl, because he came back out on stage shirtless. And yes, all of the women in this audience went absolutely feral. It was like being at a Beatles concert in 1964, except it wasn't teen girls, obviously. It was, women who were fans of his from back in the day. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love the energy, so I'm happy to be part of that crowd. But yeah, for a few moments, it was like I couldn't hear whatever he was doing on stage because it was just people around me screaming so much. And Jesse's Girl, yeah, absolute all-time classic of the 80s. Perfect way to end the show. So once again, Rick knocked it out of the park. Both shows I saw, 2018 and this year, were fantastic concerts. I have to say, I think there's a lot of older male classic rock fans that are totally sleeping on Rick Springfield, and that is a mistake. I know there's some guys watching this video who are rolling their eyes. Older guys, I know you lived through it, but seriously, you're sleeping on Rick Springfield and sleeping on Duran Duran as well. 80s pop rock is a great part of the greater genre of classic rock, and if you're skipping Rick Springfield and Duran Duran and acts like those because it's too MTV or whatever, you're just missing out on great live entertainment, because these guys are all still putting on great shows. I saw Duran Duran in Chicago a couple of years ago, and they were fantastic. And Rick, in particular, is very good live, and he's harder rock than I think a lot of guys realize. Like, there was a point in the show, actually, right after he did the Voodoo House, he came out and just did a guitar solo for like 5 minutes, and it was pretty impressive. Now, he's not Eddie Van Halen, so I'm not going to sell you on that, but a lot of this show is him demonstrating that he's not a lightweight. He's not in a boy band, you know? He's a bona fide rock star, and I'm going to go see him pretty much anytime I get a chance, because it's a good show, there's a lot of great songs, and he's a very good live performer. But I'll leave it at that. If you've seen Rick Springfield, please tell me about that show in the comments below. Otherwise, please check out some of the other concert reviews I've done on this channel. If you're a fan of classic rock, I guarantee I've talked about a different band or artist that you're a fan of. And if you are that fan of classic rock, I do a podcast. It's all about classic rock. We got a lot of great stuff coming up, so I would invite you to check that out. Finally, I will have more reviews from Summerfest in the coming weeks, so please subscribe to this YouTube channel and keep an eye out for those as well. But with that, I will just say thank you very much for watching this video, and keep rocking.